welcome back to my channel. My name is lisaphan, and today, as you can see by the title, is a topic I am super passionate about. I did a growing up Asian American video last year, which I will link here or here, wherever it is. So as you may or may not know, May is the month for Asian Pacific Islander American Heritage Month, or just APAH month. And if you guys follow me on my other platforms such as Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok, I talk about being Asian American and just more representation on those platforms more, just because I don't want everything I say to have to do with this, but I definitely do live by those intentions and morals when I produce content. But today I thought I'd go over a bunch of topics within the Asian American community, such as internal racism, normalized racism, stereotypes, other issues, and just a broad spectrum of things. I honestly don't know how I'm going to make all this make sense, but we have topics, I'll be discussing them, and I asked for you guys' input on Instagram in a category I'm going to be talking about cultural appropriation, and a lot of you guys had a lot of input, so if you're not for this topic, I suggest exiting out. But here is a safe space. I hope you guys appreciate this being a safe space, as well for me to talk about my feelings. Also, before I begin, I didn't want to start this without a disclaimer, but I couldn't find the words for it, so here's a TikTok that kind of puts all of my thoughts together.
It is true that we as Asian Americans have certain privileges. What we're not gonna do here is play this game of what I keep calling Oppression Olympics. We're not gonna keep debating about who has it worse or who has it best. I think it's fair to say that Black Americans have been through so much throughout American history, but saying that Asian Americans can't speak up about their problems because another group of minorities might have it worse. This game of playing who is more oppressed than the other, we're not gonna get anywhere playing that.
So in no way am I trying to belittle anyone else's problems in our society. So with that being said, let's get into the video. So the first topic I'll be talking about today is normalized racism and hate crimes against Asian Americans. So what I mean by this is the fact that racist jokes and just names and small actions against Asian Americans are very normalized in today's society. Most of the racist remarks that Asian Americans get seen as a joke because, you know, historically they're just, you know, funny to everyone else outside of the Asian American community, such as pulling your eyes back to kind of mimic monolids, also saying ching chong or ling ling, or just calling Asian Americans different names that try to mimic the language and make fun of it, the nail salon accents, just Asian accents in general, trying to talk like someone that just immigrated here, and always telling Asian Americans, you know, eat a dog, or like, oh, I can't let you touch my dog, you're gonna eat it. All of those jokes growing up were very normalized, and if you spoke up about it once, someone would say you're being too sensitive. For example, just to put this in perspective, if someone were to say to me when I was younger, they would call me ching chong or ling ling, I'd be like, that's not a real word, like, why are you calling me that? And they were just like, oh, we're just being funny, we're only kidding, like, don't be sensitive. Then I would ask myself, am I being too sensitive? Am I taking a joke too far? So growing up, that type of racism was just really normalized in my brain and in society for people to just make fun of Asian Americans all the time without getting any shit for it, but just kind of putting down Asian Americans, especially for things academically as well. If I did well on a test, people would say, oh, it's because you're Asian, you're only good at math because you're Asian. And those kind of comments, if I were to speak up about it, it would be like, oh, you're being too sensitive about it. We don't mean it like that way. We're not trying to be mean, you know? So for like generations and years growing up, you yourself may find yourself kind of making those jokes as well to fit in with the fellow American kids, and even I kind of like laughed at it growing up as well. After I tried to stand up for myself once, I kind of just assimilated to it, and I often laughed with them just so that I didn't seem so different, because I was different already. It was very confusing growing up, and so only now do I ever see a lot of young Gen Z Asian Americans standing up for themselves, talking about the negative things in the media that kind of like go against Asian Americans. But in terms of normalized racism, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. I'm sure we've all experienced people calling us too sensitive or that we should take it as a joke, even though it isn't. So the next time someone tells you a racist joke and says they're only trying to be funny, tell them it's not funny. And if you did this to any other minority class, there would be a huge issue about it. But because we're Asian American, we're seen as, you know, submissive and nicer. I don't know, that's like the kind of view people see us as. Just calling us sensitive kind of dismisses the fact that we should be angry, which it shouldn't. No type of racism should be normalized, and I hate that within the Asian American community we've let that happen. That's a huge issue that I try to advocate for as often as I can. As much as I see it, I'm like, that's not really funny. You know, like growing up, I saw that Angela Johnson skit where she was mimicking like nail salon ladies. Even I, when I was younger, thought it was really funny, but the more you think about it, it's kind of like they're making fun of, you know, a Vietnamese American that just immigrated and had to learn the skills to do, you know, nail salon work, and that's the only career they could have coming to America. My parents did it. That accent is from learning English, you know, learning a brand new language at 25. Like, that's really hard to do. If you've ever tried to learn a very confusing language at an older age, it's extremely difficult unless you are gifted in linguistics. It's much easier to assimilate when you're younger, but given that a lot of nail salon women have immigrated in their later 20s, they had to learn English while they were doing the job, and they had no time to go to a class or school, and you just mimicking that accent that they have, it's just not a fun job. I know some people fantasize it to be because it's art or whatever, but that's the only path they could take. Even my mother, she does nails, but if she had the choice to do any other career path, she would. She's a very smart lady, but you know, coming to America, this was her only job option. And so when people make skits like that or do that accent on Twitter and try to be funny, it's really not funny at all. So I hope that encapsulates that main issue I wanted to talk about. And as far as hate crimes, the word hate crime is very emotional to hear. When you think of hate crimes, you don't think of Asian Americans, and it's very easy to just forget the fact that Asian Americans are, you know, discriminated against because there are such bigger issues in society. But I guess that's like an overall problem because people kind of just look over the problems of Asian Americans. In terms of hate crimes, of course, there's been a spike ever since COVID-19.
Federal authorities are warning of an increase in hate crimes against Asian Americans as the coronavirus continues to spread across the country. The new FBI analysis obtained by ABC News says such incidents are likely to surge, and that could endanger Asian American communities, as many Asian American businesses fear also for their livelihoods. ABC News Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas is here to explain. Thanks for joining us, Pierre.
Good to be with you.
So the national director of the Council of Asian Pacific Americans told ABC News the intelligence report is an indication of just how serious the problem is, saying, quote, "We need to stop dismissing this. It's easy to dismiss racism when it does not impact you." So what are you hearing from your sources on what's concerning authorities right now?
Lindsay, in a word, ignorance. Some FBI officials are concerned that some Americans are associating the COVID virus simply with being Asian. The fears here is that there will be a surge in incidents of bias and hate against Asian Americans here in the U.S. That's the concern we see in this new report compiled by the FBI's Houston office and sent to local law enforcement agencies.
So is there actual evidence of a surge in bias or hate crimes?
Lindsay, we have to wait to see what the data actually shows, but there is some anecdotal evidence of attacks and incidents of bias. The report details cases from Los Angeles to New York to Texas. Let me tell you about a case from this report from March 14th in Midland, Texas, where, quote, 3 Asian American family members, including a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old, were stabbed. The suspect indicated that he stabbed the family because he thought the family was Chinese and infecting people with coronavirus. A 2-year-old and a 6-year-old attacked, which tells you how nonsensical and ignorant this all can be, Lindsay.
What a horrific story. All right. Our thanks to you, Pierre. We know you'll stay on top of this.
And, you know, there's even like historical factors such as, you know, hate against Japanese Americans and Chinese Americans. There's a lot of stuff we forget. And I literally had this thought today. I realized that growing up learning about US history for literally years and years and years, learning about US history has always been about, oh, the colonizers came over, sought out this land, 13 colonies, got their freedom away from Great Britain, and they achieved that goal or whatever. And then we have a brief brushing over slavery and how it ended and how rights were given and stuff like that. And then when it comes down to the world wars and just Chinese Americans immigrating, the gold rush, you know, Japanese internment camps, that's also very a one-day class for all of that. But I would spend literally an entire quarter talking about how colonizers came over, meeting with Native Americans, trying to get away from Great Britain. We learned all of that for so long, even though a lot of it sounds wrong, like they basically took land from Native people. That's another issue in itself. But I'm just talking about how the American schooling system teaches history, and there's a lot we don't know about other social groups. We basically only focus on all of the highlights of the white men. So anyway, we're gonna shy away from all the history lessons. I know I wasn't here to give you guys one, but I'll link a lot of academic sources down below if you guys want to read more. So anyway, let's just hop into the next issue in Asian America. If you're not aware, there's a lot of back and forth when it comes to Asian Americans and African Americans. Now, this part I am talking about gets really confusing because honestly, I was really uncomfortable talking about all of this because it's a very sensitive subject. But as many of you guys are aware, most likely, you know of the model minority myth about Asians and Black people in America, and it's really hard to think about and talk about, so I tried my best to kind of express it in the lens of a immigrant daughter, because I have heard a lot of negative things throughout my whole entire life when it comes to talking about African Americans in the Asian American community. So I just wanted to shed some light onto this issue that I have a really big problem with because I hate it. Anyway, just hear me out and let me know your thoughts down below. But this is definitely an issue in Asian America where a lot of immigrants that come kind of give this connotation or just set this precedent that their kids can't bring home a Black partner. I don't know if you guys can relate, but that's very much prevalent in my life, sadly enough, where immigrants that have started families in America have a negative connotation when it comes to African Americans. It goes the other way as well, where African Americans make fun of Asians a lot. There's just a lot of back and forth. I don't know how to approach this discussion in an easy to talk about way. It's really hard to talk about all this just because it's so sensitive. I'm going to talk about it in the lens of an Asian American and within the community what is talked about amongst each other. So, I mean, growing up, your parents may or may not be as keen about Black people because of their experiences or just what they hear in the news, which again, the news is filtered in a way to make Black people seem negative a lot over the years, you know, like that's something that we've become more aware about now. But you know, like 20-30 years ago when my parents were immigrating, like a lot of people just see negative things in the news when it comes to Black people, and so you can see where their kind of opinion has formed. It's very common to talk about this kind of thing where, like, if you said that to like your Asian guy friend, what would happen if you brought home a Black girl to your parents? And then they'd say, oh, my mom would flip, my mom doesn't like Black people, or like that's just not going to be a thing because my parents don't like Black people. But for what reason, you know? So I don't know where I'm going with this, to be honest. I just wanted to bring it up because it's a big issue. I think we need to break that barrier. We need to stop having this weird view against each other. Although I don't support these, I know that it exists and I want to talk about it, even though, you know, personally I don't ever disrespect people in general like that, and I don't know how else we can fix it besides talking about it and kind of informing each other about what's good and what's not. Anyway, I think that's my spiel. There's just a lot I want to talk about and it's hard to put in a video that will be entertaining and informative. You know, it's really hard to talk about serious things and have you guys watch through all of it. So anyway, the next issue I have is with cultural appropriation and things of that sort. So let's just hop right into it. So there's a lot that has to do with cultural appropriation in Asian America. We see a lot of celebrities or just clothing companies making Vietnamese 𝐷𝐈𝐄𝐒 or Chinese, I don't know how to say the name of that dress, so I'm not gonna butcher it, but we see that everywhere. As you can see by these examples I blew up, I asked for your guys' opinion on these things, and there's a lot of mixed emotions here. I asked for the opinion of Asian Americans, and I also asked for the opinion of people who live in Asian countries or just not America. So when it comes to cultural appropriation, there's a lot of things such as, you know, the dresses, and then the Western world takes it and spins it into something sexualized and really distasteful, and it kind of strips the true meaning of the garment away. If you didn't know about 𝐷𝐈𝐄𝐒 or the Chinese traditional dress or just any traditional dress, they're all all signs of modesty, status, tradition, and kind of closed and just modest, just because that's the history of Asia. People kept it very, very modest. The whole thing about these dresses is that they're tradition. People wear them as school uniforms. I wore a white 𝐼𝐼 for my Catholic church confirmation. People wear these at their weddings, huge celebrations, New Year's, and it's just something that has been within the culture forever. And so when I see celebrities, large corporation clothing brands spin it and add a long ass slit and just no trousers under, or they have a big ass hole right here, or it's just really, really sexualized, it's hard to look at and hard to appreciate that it's hard to like even know whether or not you're appreciating the garment just because it's sexualized to the point where it doesn't even look like the same dress anymore. It doesn't have the same meaning, and it's stripped of its tradition and true culture, which hurts me because I'm so proud of my vibrant Vietnamese culture. And so when I see an 𝐼𝐼 kind of stripped of its true meaning, it breaks my heart, and it's distasteful in all forms. I think it's very much so cultural appropriation. But as far as like a normal dress, like if it's made correctly but worn as a fashion statement, that's somewhere I think there's a fine line between cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation. A lot of you guys have varying opinions, and I also got opinions from some people who were not Asian, talking about what they thought about these dresses. Many of you guys said that you want to wear, you know, the Chinese dress, the shorter version, the bodycon, like it's super pretty, and that is a fine dress. Like even my friend Jessie, she's Chinese, she said there's nothing wrong with the dress, but there's only a problem when it's the person wearing it or the way they're wearing it or just the reason why they're wearing it, because I think it's totally okay to appreciate a culture, wear it for a photo within that country, or just actually wear it for what it is. And then when you're trying to make a fashion statement out of it, tweak it to your liking, sexualize it, you have stepped over that line of appreciation and into appropriation, and it's not okay. So there is a very, very fine line, and I have yet to figure out what that means to me personally, but in general, the consensus from you guys in my DMs were that the dress that I posted is okay, but it depends on the person wearing it, why they're wearing it, how they're wearing it. That draws the line between appreciation and appropriation. As far as wearing like hanbok or just like traditional dress within the host country, when someone goes to like Korea, it's very, very common to see someone wearing a hanbok. They wear it to the palaces, take photos, and they get it done at a proper like salon where they have the dresses for you to pick out and choose, and they do your hair traditionally. Everything's beautiful. That is okay. That is appreciating the culture of the country you're visiting. But also, I got some feedback from people from the countries. You guys are telling me that sometimes it's seen as really cool, and people from those countries actually don't care as much about when Westerners wear their traditional dresses. I think this comes from the lack of knowledge as to why they're wearing these dresses and why it's wrong, just because Asian Americans, I feel like, definitely get more angry about these topics just because they were treated really wrong growing up, and through the experiences I've had growing up, just seeing people sexualize an outfit or just wearing it for the trendiness or shits and giggles, like I don't like that, because if I were to wear that growing up, I'd get made fun of. It's definitely gotten better. I've even worn 𝐼𝐼 to school before, and people always compliment on my dresses, but I definitely think when I was younger that wouldn't have happened just because people weren't as informed or appreciative. It's really hard for me to kind of explain cultural appropriation in this sense, just because I don't know what's right or wrong sometimes, and a lot of you guys also agree with me and say you don't know what the line is. Also, another thing to note with this whole talk about cultural appropriation, I also got a DM or two about how people don't understand what the big deal is about cultural appropriation, especially here in America. But I guess that there's things such as globalization that I'm sure you guys have learned about or should learn about in school, how we're blending cultures almost every day here in America. I think with all of these trends popping up, it is a result of globalization and companies knowing about other, countries' garments, and they want to change it, bring something new to America. It's very weird. There's a lot of opinions here. I got a lot of different ones from you guys. To sum up the topic of cultural appropriation, a lot of you guys said that you know, people would be okay with people wearing traditional dresses within that country just because, you know, you guys see it as appreciating of the culture, there would be no problem. But if you wore it here in front of Asian Americans who got ridiculed for that, who got put down and bullied for these kind of traditions and how the way they looked, it's a different story just because of how the society you are wearing it in has been treated in the past. So again, like, it really depends on where you're from, how you grew up, your opinions about it. But there is another trend I want to talk about that's very, very prevalent on social media these days, and that is the fox eye trend. If you don't know what that is, I'll throw up some pictures, but it's basically when people do that makeup where they elongate their eyes and then they hold it back like a model pose or whatever, like Gigi Hadid does, and it kind of like yanks the eye back. Do you see like how my eyes kind of go back when I do that? I don't have the inner kind of eyeliner, but often people do that. But what does that look like to you? If you have grown up Asian American in an area where there's not a lot of Asians, you've definitely seen this. And I don't know, to be honest, what is so trendy about that pose. I mean, I'm a sucker for doing this, but that's just me holding my face. I never intentionally yank my eyes back, you know, like, I don't really know. But I know there's even a surgery to even like pin up the eyes. It's like a string in the inside when they do plastic surgery. They pin your skin back to really stretch out the eye, like so. And I have very differing opinions when it comes to this. It's either it's totally okay or it's not. And I've seen tons and tons of TikToks trying to explain why it's not okay. And then I've gotten plenty of DMs from you guys saying that it's totally fine because it's a makeup look. And the way doing this eyeliner has been around for a really, really long time, to be honest. And when I first saw the fox eye trend, I had no issues with it. I definitely think that this is very triggering for a lot of young Asian Americans just because we grew up getting made fun of for having monoliths, and now people are pulling their eyes as a trend. This used to be something to be racist towards us, but I think the people who are doing it don't understand or don't remember that this has happened to us. And so I think that it's great that people are making TikToks and being informative about this topic. I think it's great. I guess in a nutshell, it is wrong because it's something that people were made fun of for, put down for. This eye shape was just not attractive. And even now, Asians with monolids aren't seen as like the most attractive people in the world, but when a white girl does it like this, it's beautiful, it's amazing. It's hard to be okay with it because people have told you you're ugly or just not told you you were pretty for those eye shapes, and now that some white girls or models are doing it, it's cool. Again, this is just kind of really weird or hard to talk about, so let me know your thoughts down below. I really couldn't end this section on an easy note, so let's move on. The last and final broad aspect or issue I have here about Asian America are the internal and external stereotypes we have of Asian Americans. Let's begin again with the accents and sounds. I saw an amazing clip on TikTok today where a woman was trying to kind of tell a story about her college like floor mate maybe, and her college floor mate was Korean, but in the entire comedic skit she did not once use an Asian accent to make the kind of skit funnier. She literally said it the way it was, honestly kind of just imitating the innocence of her fellow student.
When I was in college, I lived down the hall from a foreign exchange student from Korea, and she kept asking me if I knew certain people. She'd be like, "Do you know John?" And I'd be like, "No." She'd be like, "Do you know Shayna?" And I'd be like, "No." "Are you only asking me if I know black people?" And she goes, "Yes." And I was like, "Do you think I know all the black people at this school because I'm black?" And she goes, "Uh-huh, yes."
So it was a great example of how you can tie in Asian people into your skit without having to do that stereotypical Asian accent. It's possible. I hope people know that and we stop hearing all of these comedic skits with those accents. But again, with stereotypes, it's just really, really hard when we're not talking about them to break them. And so if you believe the same things as me as to progress and move forward in society, you should also do your part in trying to break those stereotypes and not use Asian jokes as part of your personal brand. I've seen plenty of Asian creators that use Asian jokes as part of their brand, which only makes it seem more okay to say Asian jokes to Asian people. And so, I mean, I shouldn't say Asian jokes, they're racist jokes to Asian people. It just makes it seem like it's okay when it's not, and so we should stop, you know, putting down ourselves to show others that it's not okay to do that in general, because, you know, the explanation we get is like, oh, it's funny because this person also did it, she's Asian, like, why can't I? It's like, no, she was just being wrong, she shouldn't have done that. So I guess to sum up this whole stereotyping issue I wanted to discuss here, there's just a lot of pressure and judgment when it comes to stereotyping people, especially within the community, people outside of the community stereotyping. And so I think to progress, we need to better understand each other, be more open-minded, because there's a lot of tradition that comes into play when there's also stereotyping, just because, you know, growing up, our parents are super strict, hard on us, we work really hard to get good grades, and so just Asians or other people, other groups just seem smarter all the time, but that's just because we were pretty much raised the same way. But that's not the case for everyone. As I'm editing right now and it's towards the end of today's video, I realized I didn't touch base on a lot of topics I also wanted to cover in terms of mental health and Asian beauty standards in our community that still exists. I know there's a stigma when it comes to mental health, and there's a lot of things that play with our traditions that make us want to fix our features, lighten our skin, get a nose job, things like that. So rather than discussing more topics for this video, I wanted to just ask you guys your input down below. I know I've talked briefly about these topics on my Instagram stories before. So anyway, yeah, I'm going to be ending today's video now, but again, please talk to me down below and further this conversation. So to close out today's video, I want to briefly brush over a current topic about COVID-19 and how hate is the current virus within our community, because people correlate coronavirus with Asians and how we carry the virus, and there have been multiple cases of hate crimes and just really hard, brutal racism in our society since this whole pandemic started. And so it's really hard to see, especially since I haven't really gone out and experienced it myself, but online the comments are brutal towards Asians, and this is not a ethnic group based, you know, disease. It's something that can affect everyone, and we really need to advocate for ourselves and speak up. With that being said, I know this video was long, and I thank you so much for watching because it was super important to me to talk about this today. I know I didn't get to touch base on everything in this video, but I hope the sources I list or link down below are helpful as well and kind of aid this issue that I wanted to talk about. But yeah, once again, thank you guys so much for watching today's video. It was so great to talk to you guys, and until my next one, I will see you guys then. Bye, beauties!